After making a very shonky skull for my pirate bottles, I decided to try for a better result at skull sculpture using monster clay. You can buy monster clay online pretty easily, and this was the first time I'd tried to make anything from it. As it turns out, this clay is quite hard at room temperature, but a minute in the microwave softened it up well enough to start modelling. Armed with a swag of reference pictures, I started to create the form and used a wad of paper towel inside of the model to create some bulk around which I could shape the head. Using the reference pictures as a guide, I shaped the main part of the head and scooped out parts for the eye sockets and the nasal cavity. You can smooth the warm clay pretty easily with your fingers and thumb. In some places, like around the bridge of the nose, I had to add extra clay. Initially I made the eye sockets way too big, so I fixed this up with a bit of massaging. I then cut out the bits around the back of the eye sockets, creating the cheekbones. It was when I went to put the head on a stand that I realised I was going to have to make a major change. When I first tried to support the model with a piece of dowel, the weight of the sculpture pressing down on it just forced the dowel through the top of the head. So I turned up a rough sphere from an old branch and then proceeded to do some brain surgery. I cut the skull in half and inserted the wooden sphere. I got this to fit by removing bits of clay until it went in snugly. Then I warmed the clay with a heat gun to reattach the two halves. I modified a sculpting tool to act as a smoother. This proved to be a really useful tool. Then I shaped the part around the upper jaw and the teeth and decided to make another tool that I thought I was going to need. I used a bit of guitar string and brass tube cut to length. I looped the guitar string and held it in place with some 2-part putty, which hardens pretty much like steel. Again, this proved to be quite a useful tool. To make the teeth, I rolled some small pieces of clay into small cylinders and cut them in half. I placed them individually on the skull, and this worked out quite well. Looking back at my reference pictures, I realised I needed to add more volume to the forehead part, so I bulked this up and then shaped and smoothed it. I added some fine lines where the skull plates join and used a very rough kitchen sponge to make a texture that looked more bone-like. Knowing that I was going to make a mould from this skull later on, I added a piece of plastic tube so that I would be able to pour plastic or foam into the mould when it was finished. So this completed the sculpting part. You can see the moulding being done in another video.